Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna devotees, Hare Krishna Prabhus, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the 2025 Celebrating the Sacred Feminine, brought to you by the ISKCON Vaishnavi Ministry. Today we are joined by Her Grace Kusha Prabhu and Her Grace Vidya Prabhu, who are both residing in Vrindavan. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, Krishna explains various ways that we can see him in the material world. And then Krishna in Bhagavad Gita chapter 10, text 34, Krishna specifically, so for this campaign celebrating the sacred feminine, we will be delving so that we can deepen our relationship with Krishna and his devotees. So today we'll just be having a conversation on that. So Kusha Prabhu and Vidya Prabhu are Srila Prabhupada disciples, and they mentioned to me that they are very, very devoted to Srimati Tulsi Devi and serving Srimati Tulsi Devi. So, and I can see that they're so empowered with this wonderful Shakti and this Vrindavan energy and this Vrindavan consciousness. So I'm so thrilled that you were able to make the time to be with us today and to share your experiences with Prabhupada and your perspectives on bhakti, which is very much needed, especially for women. And I guess some of the controversial things that are said about women in bhakti. So it's very beautiful to see examples, living examples of women who are strong in their bhakti. So before we begin, we'll just start with a few invocation prayers. So Namo Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine, Namaste Saraswati Deve, Gauravani Pracharini, Nirvishesha, Shunyavadi, Astritya Deshitani. Hare Krishna. So I actually had a bit of a read of the purport to this verse 1034, and I found it interesting because there wasn't much on fine speech there. Actually, fine speech isn't really, it's in the translation, but in the purport itself there isn't like a deep, in-depth discussion on fine speech. So maybe we could kick off the discussion with a bit of a perspective on what is fine speech. What does it mean to have this quality of fine speech?
Well, Kusha, as Kusha was just saying, that fine speech basically is always having Krishna and or the words of Srila Prabhupada in your mind when you do speak, so that everything is sort of kept, you're sort of channeling what Krishna is inspiring you to say at any moment, at any time. And as soon as you lose touch with that in your heart or in your mind, then you're not necessarily giving the fine speech that you would be hoping to use.
For the devotee, glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and everything connected to him, and everything is connected to him. The idea would be to be in the mood of glorification, gratitude and glorification. When one is Krishna conscious, automatically that refinement, that poetic, one becomes like a kavi, one becomes poetic. If you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna book, all of Prabhupada's writings, they're poetic. How did he, so poetically, his speech was so fine because of his absorption in Krishna Bhakti. He was fully absorbed. He said his purports were ecstasies. So that ecstasy of Krishna consciousness comes out in fine speech.
And I think fine speech is also always being conscious of the person who's you're delivering that speech to, and their sensibilities, so that you don't ever deliver something in a way that's not as comfortable or as sweet. as you'd like it to be, because Krishna is all sweetness, Radharani is all sweetness. The spiritual world is all sweetness. So, it's not that you're not going to speak the truth or speak, the absolute truth, but to do it in such a way that it's palatable to those who are listening.
And if we look at those other words that Prabhupada uses, Meda, which is intelligence, Smriti, memory, those firmness, if you're firmly rooted in Krishna consciousness, if you're utilizing your intelligence, if you're focused on the glories of Krishna, and automatically like Prabhupada said, all your $10 problems are solved. It's like you have millions of dollars because you're already absorbed in Krishna. But if I know myself, if I'm left to my own modes of nature, it's not that fine. My speech is not fine. It's I'm a little bit of a ruffian. I'm a village girl. And fortunately, in Vraj, we learn about village life also. There's intimacy, and the cordiality is less. And I see the camaraderie there's joking. Joking is part of it, and teasing and giving each other a little grief, you know what I mean? So fine speech isn't just one dimensional. It doesn't just have to look like something out of a poetry book. They can have all kinds of aspects to it.
I think one of the things that is very apparent, in Prabhupada's books and then also in Vrindavan, is how everything is as it's supposed to be. It's sort of like the sixth house in astrology, that everything that comes to you, you have to understand has been sent to you by Krishna personally. And I know it's hard for us with human brains to comprehend how, Krishna can be there for every soul that's floating around, even around us. But he's that big, and sometimes we become intimidated to, trying to realize how grand he is that he can do that. But everything every experience we have, every person we meet, every thing we read has some deliverance that is personally for us. And I think it's particularly when you read Prabhupada's books every day, and when you're also like in the Holy Dawn, doing your direct service. But and also here, everything you do is service. So and you become aware of that. You brush your teeth for Krishna, everything from the moment you get up to the moment you go to bed, and it has some relevance to where we are in our Krishna consciousness, and is teaching us something, making us aware of something that we perhaps weren't aware of before. Many things.
Right. To be teachable, we have to be able to have humility. And the more we know we don't know.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely. I love this point that you mentioned on, like it's a bit difficult to sort of comprehend how Krishna is there for every living entity. And it was very interesting because yesterday I heard a lecture. It was on Canto 3 of Srimad Bhagavatam, and it was explaining how Krishna in the form of Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, like that, how he's like actually maintaining the body, and Krishna is like the fire of digestion, and so many things like that. So when you look at like Lord Nityananda, it's like he's holding up the whole universe. They look like they're just there and they're smiling, but it's almost incomprehensible just what they're doing and just what they're doing for us on a personal level. And it really moved me yesterday. Like when I went and I paid obeisances, I was just like, thank you, Krishna. Like, because it was very technical. But it just really moved me, just how much Krishna is doing for us. It's practically incomprehensible. It's quite amazing. So
It's true.
Krishna
It's
specifically.
the science of Krishna consciousness. It's a scientific And it's a science of self-realization. You know, that Krishna, he's Ascharya Karmani. His activities are astounding, like, whoa. And then he's still playing his flute and chanting at the same time.
Playing with us.
Yeah.
It's very soft and loving and
There are those 5 qualities that
almost
devotees are
it feels like he's approachable, even though he's like
so grand, so big.
Yeah, but that's Narayana. That's Ashwarya Bhav, that unapproachable, grand, magnificent nature, full of all opulences. Vrindavan Bhav is sweet. It's very personal, and there's a lot of joking, and there's, the cowherd boys steal his lunch because he's got laddus and kachoris, and there's this sweetness. He is enjoying pastimes, like loving pastimes as an ordinary child. I mean, that's another, like, oh my goodness, God is doing that? Like, wow. That's another kind of, whoa. But he's doing that he's relating in all the ways, all the sweet human emotions. And he's interacting with us
in a way that we can understand.
in a way that we can, exactly.
That's suited for each individual person. Those 3 reasons that we want to follow Krishna is that he knows all past, present, and future. And you go, wait a second, I thought we had choice. And then the answer always is because he already knows what we're going to choose. So he's already preparing for what we're going to choose. And then we also want to follow him because he knows us better than we know ourselves. As Paramatma, he's been in every body with us, as super soul. And we can hardly remember what we did yesterday. He can remember what we did in all of our bodies. So he's actually knows what's best for us better than what we think we want. He knows what we want. And the third reason we want to follow him is because he created us. He's our father, and each of us he created individually with a mission and a personality and all the different qualities that each of us have that aren't necessarily the same as each other, which makes it so much more interesting to understand.
Like snowflakes,
Yeah.
All individual. Prabhupada said variety is the mother of enjoyment.
yes.
And then,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. So in the translation, Krishna does say, "Of woman I am," and then he quotes, and then there's that thing of fine speech. How do we make this connection of fine speech sort of being a mark of femininity in a sense? Like, is there perhaps some sort of correlation or something that we could draw on as to why it would be deemed feminine?
The other thing I have to say that I don't know how it connects, but I'm going to connect it, sort of. And it's an inconceivable deal. Because she just touched on it. Vidya because Krishna knows all that will be. It's saying here, I am the generating principle of all that is yet to be, our potential. And then, you know what I just love about this verse? First he says, I am all devouring death. Okay, he's smiling.
So we know we have to.
He's smiling, right? His beautiful smile, and then we get attracted, and then we're getting ground up, and that owl devouring, his teeth. Ouch.
So,
and then he goes into, I'm the generating principle of all that is yet to be. And then he says, among women, I am fame. Why does he say that? Why does he put death
first?
Mystery. The mystery is the potential. Anything that is unknown. And the one thing about ladies, is there a mystery? There's a joke, and I love this joke. It's really hilarious. It's a surfer joke, and that's there is a surfer, and he did some really good things, and God said, I want to give you a wish. And he said, I want a 4-lane highway from California to Hawaii so I can go look at the surf spots. And God said, could you think of something else that's a little hard? And he thought, and he said, I want to understand women. And God said, how would you like those lanes built?
Oh, good.
So in this verse, it talks about the mystery, what has yet to be. Men can never really guess. Women are a mystery to fellows. And so it's even in the verse.
I think also because we come more from our hearts, that that makes the speech softer and sweeter, and it's kind of an ability that women are given if they utilize it. Sometimes I think women think they have to be tough and hard like men, but I think we are better off cultivating our feminine wiles, if you want to call them, or just qualities, fine speech and heartfelt heartfelt sympathy. Um, I remember there was the woman who helped get women's rights in America said that women should be in charge of the army because there would never be any wars because they don't want their sons to go to be killed. They just because they're soft-hearted, they don't want there to be death of any living entity, really.
I was just because I'm preparing for a Prabhupada Leader class, and so I'm looking through all these books, and I'm looking at the same time period in all of the books, and Mukunda Maharaj's Achyutanandas, etc. Like I'm looking through Brahmanandas, and I'm looking at right now. I was looking at the period of initiation, the first initiation. So what I see is because there are different styles. And like Hari Grieva, the way that he wrote was super poetic.
Enchanting.
Very enchanting, very poetic. And Achyutananda, he writes like his name, kind of in like, it's sometimes very profound, thought provoking, but shocking. The way he speaks is shocking. It makes you think. It really makes you think, and it's a little bit sometimes over my head, and it's even irritating, but it's profound. So there's all kinds of aspects of that which could be fine, because the subject matter is fine. It's fine.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Even though um, they're all speaking with their unique author's voice, because they're glorifying Prabhupada, they're safe.
It's purity.
It's purity. Purity is the force. It's the force, even though their own personality is coming through their words, because the subject matter it's not nonsense. It's completely enlivening. So if we're always speaking about Krishna or anything that's related to Krishna, then we're in good shape. Women are, as you were saying, Vidya was saying, if women were running things, there wouldn't be war. And what I was reading about today was Mukunda Maharaj and how he went into the draft board. And he was like horrified. The FBI wrote him a letter because he was just kind of ignoring them. So they were like, if you don't show up, you're getting arrested. I mean, it was like intimidating. And so he was learning from all of his cohorts, like what they did to get out of it. And he was like, but I'm a Krishna Bhakta and I won't. Some of them did horrible things, like took tons of, he called them bennies, and came in like completely incoherent and um, peeing on all over themselves, like unable to function. And they were just put into the insane category. And he said, but I don't do that. I'm a devotee. I can't take intoxication. So he had to just have faith in Krishna and go in. And he just started chanting. And he could see that, he did a few things to not look so good, but he really depended 100% on Krishna. And he went in and he just started chanting and muttering, and they sent him into the psychiatrist, and they gave him a 1Y category, which was like, you probably will never get called, you know. And he was so relieved. But during that period of time when Prabhupada came to save us, we were the baby boomers that our fathers came back from war. They were war torn, their minds were blown, and they had a bunch of babies. And we're the baby boomers after the war, and we don't like war because our father came home in a mess in regard to the war.
Yeah.
And so here we are, Prabhupada comes in, and they have this terrible draft, and they're sending all these young men to Vietnam. Something like 1 in 5 or some huge number of the population were killed in Vietnam, and it was an undeclared war. It was really not even a righteous war at all. It was about resources. And Prabhupada saved us. And we're reading this part, about the protests, and even the Pope weighed in on stop the war. And the hippies actually amalgamized. They became there was solidarity between them because they all just didn't want war at all. And they bound together, but they found refuge at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada. So sweetness can come from bitterness too. Something good can come after devastation. Regenesis. And Prabhupada regenerated us from hippies to happies. So
It's honestly so beautiful to hear you sharing this, because my experience of it's just hearing, Prabhupada saved us. But it's more like through the books. So it's so, Prabhupada has. And literally, you said it's from hippies to happies. It's actually giving me goosebumps just hearing how just hearing that gratitude actually come through, and that conviction that Prabhupada saved us.
And continues to save us.
It's actually become so real.
But by the grace of Prabhupada, we don't know
Yes.
what our lives would be. My father used to say, there's 2 things that are guaranteed: taxes and death. And guess what? We've cheated both of them. Right? I'm like, Dad, we got that figured out.
That's a good one.
There are these 5 qualities that we're supposed to be working on as Vaishnavas, as devotees, that materialists will say it kind of makes you weak. And, of course, we have to kind of, just stay strong and determined. So one is tolerance, one is patience, one is forgiveness, one is gratitude, and probably the hardest one is humility. So we're all working on those qualities to make those bigger and better in our lives. And the materialists will say you're foolish to do that because you will become famous and rich.
That Prabhupada, he didn't encourage ambition.
No, and of course, as it says here, we get fame, and we get fame, fortune, fine speech, memory, intelligence, steadfastness, and patience, which there are some of the very things that those 5 qualities are talking about.
And the modes of nature, as we engage ourselves in this process of devotional service, we're elevated through the modes of nature. I may have been a crude dude when I was, yeah, I was. I'm not, I have to be honest, you know what I mean? I was what they call a Tita from Kaneohe, like a rough girl, and like I said, a villager. But because Srila Prabhupada has
Fine-tuned us.
given us the mercy, seriously given us the mercy, and this is a scientific process, just by engaging it, our modes of nature improve. I started out probably in the mode of ignorance and goodness. It was kind of a mixed deal, you know, a little of both. I loved nature and all of that, but there was a lot of tamagun in me. And as we rise through the modes of nature by continually engaging in this sadhana bhakti process, we come to Sudasattva, where we are getting pleasure from finer uh, enjoyments. And we don't take pleasure of going to the bar and drinking and all of these hellish things that people are naked dance. Prabhupada said, you know, that kind of thing is not in our, not even remotely interesting. And we wouldn't even be tempted. That temptation is completely gone. And our enjoyments are going to see the deities in what they're wearing and seeing that the flower just fell or somebody just put another flower in Srimati Radharani's hand. Those kind of lovely, lovely experiences are much more sought after. We're running to see them. And we're just so grateful to have had the opportunity to become refined in the association program.
Here in Vrindavan, it's become so much busier and crowded, and you know, we've lost all the being able to just wander in the sands of Vrindavan like you know we could do in the beginning when we were first here. But the one of the most glorious parts is watching all these devotees seeing the deities for the first time and the transformation that takes place as they come running into the temple, you know, to embrace Krishna consciousness. It's quite an exciting event if you don't get run over.
Yeah, we have lots of crowds here. You know, in the West, it's like we're inviting, and
Nobody
it's
comes.
kind of a slim deal. But here, it's like a mosh pit, serious mosh pit. On one hand, you wish that there was a lot of people, and on the other hand, when there's lots of people, you're like, oh. I had just recently had a broken ankle, and so I was scared to go in the temple. Someone stepped on while I was paying my obeisances on my ankle. No, that just recently. I didn't go back. I haven't been back because I'm waiting to get so that I'm not going to endangered. But on the other hand, we're really happy that there's so much excitement in and around seeing the deity, you know, at the,
And
you know,
experiencing everything that Vrindavan offers.
yes, it's kind
It's
of a,
palpable.
yeah, it's exciting, and it's also a double-edged sword because it's tight. It's tight, but the enthusiasm is lovely. It's really lovely. And now,
Can just
as always, the looking at the holy place and the place where Krishna's pastimes happen through the eyes of the scriptures. It's so nice. It's really nice having that
it's
kind of
really
divine vision.
it's really beautiful when scripture comes alive. It's that shastra chakshus, like seeing through the eyes of scripture. And you mentioned something earlier on where you said that sometimes tragedy or difficulty, or in quotes, something not so beautiful can result in something that is. And I was just thinking about, like, just in line with this aspect of like fine speech, the prayers of Queen Kunti. And I think before I had read that, I always used to hear like women are less intelligent, this and that, and so you walk around with this kind of complex. But when I read, I mean, on no level, like, am I anywhere close to like Queen Kunti, but I just found it so inspiring when I read her prayers, and it was so eloquent, but it was so much backed by like philosophy.
You know,
And it was
the whole idea
something that
about
was so
less
inspiring to
intelligence.
me, because I was just like, oh, fine speech.
Fine speech.
Fine speech.
She has fine speech.
Yes, I'm concerned about the conception of less intelligence because um, like even an autistic person who can chant the entire Bhagavad Gita by memory, by the way, we have one here, is not less intelligent as far as I'm concerned.
Different
They're
kinds of
differently
intelligence.
abled. They're different and their intelligence is different. So to say, again, it's more that they haven't been able to fathom the way that our mind works. Seriously, as far as I'm concerned, they'll never figure us out. I don't want them to.
No. We like remaining
We're good.
mysteries.
We like that part about
Being
potential. You know what I mean? The part in the verse where it's like, he knows all that can be, that will be. And Krishna is really the only Purusha. He is the only Purusha. And he is all of our, patis, our master. So we're lucky. I think that ladies are very, very fortunate because we just don't have the obstacle of thinking that we're men.
The other thing the thing that happened when they made us stand further back in the temples, I was kind of scuffling my feet, going, "Oh, poor us," right? And then I looked up and I could see that Krishna was actually looking at us. He was looking over the heads of the men, and were actually looking at us. And I thought maybe this is a better position to be in. And I think it was because we kind of accepted it for what it was, and we thought, okay, this must be what we deserve in this lifetime.
Well, I'm right at the point, that halfway point at Shamasundar's altar when the doors open. I make sure that we get our half of the altar.
Because that was that
I'm
guy that was
very,
pushing me.
yeah, I'm very firm. It's steadfast in being up front to see the deities.
Feet fast.
I'm steadfast, and I hold our space.
I think that's very important because I think sometimes, like being female, it's seen to be very submissive, which there is a need to be submissive, but I think there's a difference between like submissive and like almost bullying or putting someone down. There's that fine line that you have to navigate. And I think it's really like it's so cool that you're like, I hold the space.
I do.
It's just
I hold the space.
I think like more of us need to sort of take that on and maybe incorporate the aspect of fine speech into it when we address some of these things, because I think many times it's not what is said, it's actually how it's said.
Exactly.
As well.
Exactly.
So
That's a very big part.
It definitely ties.
Like if you could be like when you talk to a dog, you could be saying to that dog, "Oh, la 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 la." You could be saying terrible things to it, but if you're saying it sweetly, he'll be wagging his tail, happy about it.
Just from the sound of your voice.
And you could say sweet things harshly, and it won't work. They'll be like.
Definitely.
And
so
again,
I think maybe
in the spiritual world, it's singing, singing and dancing, not walking and talking.
that's actually such a beautiful point. Like we always hear, like the spiritual world, like every day is a festival, every step is a dance, and every word is a song, actually. And now that you bring up the points, I just think like many of like even Bhagavad Gita, like many of it I've heard is it's done in a very musical way. It's not like how we converse, and it's sometimes a little bit rough, if I could use that word. It's very eloquent and poetic and beautiful. Like even when you read the Sanskrit verses, it's beautiful. It really tugs at the heartstrings when it's pronounced well and it's expressed nicely. So that was just this is such a beautiful point that you brought up. And perhaps to conclude, which I think you have sort of well,
You're the one who brought it up.
well, I kind of made a connection from something you said. Yeah. But yes, maybe perhaps to conclude, you had mentioned this sort of in the conversation practice aspect of fine speech in our life of bhakti.
I didn't quite get that. I think you got cut off a little bit.
Okay, I think there was a pause from my side as well.
Yeah.
Okay. I think now it's better because I can see you moving. Okay. So in terms of just fine speech, is there any ways that we could consciously practice fine speech, speaking in a fine, refined manner? Is there any way that we could sort of refine ourselves actually to practice it a little bit better? Because many times we rough. Well, so I feel like sometimes I'm a bit rough. It's like, so how do you actually bring this in?
I think hearing our rounds is one way to actually be calling out to Krishna and in kind of enjoying the holy name will help us with our speech, because the more we're thinking about him, the more that we will be able to actually channel what he wants us to say, what he's how we're connecting with him. So I really believe that, the more we chant, the more we read, the more we do. I mean, it all kind of goes back to those fundamental things, and we can always use more of it, and the reminder of these things in our lives, without feeling, not without slogging ourselves for forgetting, because we also forget, and just keep carrying on, and it will eventually come. Praying for it, praying is specifically for being able to express ourselves better, more in a more a way that is understandable by whoever's listening to us.
I know myself too. I remember there was a period in my life where I think I was, my children were young. I was in my 30s, maybe 37, 38. And I started, instead of yelling at them, which I had been doing, I started writing to them. And I would, I'm living with them and all that. They're getting a little older. So I wanted to present my point without having them be defensive. So I would write, and then I would edit it, and then I would think from the position that they're hearing from, how they could hear it better. And so then I would have a third draft, and then I would give it to them. And so there was a refinement in my process. The first thing that came out was raw. It was raw. The second thing was keeping in mind what I really wanted to express and how it could be heard more succinctly, who my audience was and what exactly my real motive was, except for, besides just defending myself, eating, sleeping, mating, defending. When we get off of the animal platform and we use our intelligence and all of that, and our emotional memory,
and having faith that Krishna is going to provide it, even if we don't feel we have it.
Yes.
Because he is doing the things that they say in the verse.
And the other thing was that Prabhupada told us to journal. And so I started journaling at that time, writing letters to Prabhupada. And usually, if there was a problem that I was presenting, by the end of the letter, it was solved. So the thorn of it was removed, and I was able to deal with it in a cooler and calmer way. The children couldn't find my buttons anymore. And they really do like to push buttons at a certain, age. They're very good at button pushing. And it's their superpower, and I had to hide my buttons. And to do that, I had to relate fully, like, to Krishna first, take shelter of the Lord first, and then I would write to them exactly what the situation was in a way that they even would keep their letters. So I changed my way of being. They, interestingly enough, there was an interesting phenomenon. They came forward and they told me they liked me the old way better. And the reason was they used to get me flustered and I'd blow up my stack. And then I would feel so guilty, I'd give them whatever they wanted. So they had this total toxic work program going, were working me so they would get what they wanted. Now they couldn't figure out how to do it. It was a whole new day. So I've evolved. And part of that was because of my consciousness of Krishna. And I thought to myself, I even quit yelling at myself because I used to yell at myself. And I would realize, my goodness, the Lord in the heart's witnessing this. I wouldn't talk like this in front of anyone. My goodness, I'm talking like this right in front of Krishna. And so I started to adjust. It took me about 2 months of practice because I had a habit of, I had a good sized whip and it was covered with words and spikes and all kinds of things. And I got a lot done with my whip. It was really helpful. And then as I was making this transition to being, and it was an interesting phase of my life as well too, because it was a phase where I was actually questioning a lot about Krishna consciousness myself. And in so doing and questioning some of the practices or negative motivations that I didn't like. I don't like negative motivations. Sorry, I just don't. I do not. I was so upset about if you eat a grain, it's like killing Nakatas and killing Brahman. I was like, I rebel. I don't want negative motivations. So I started to use that same principle with myself, that I need to speak nicely to myself. So charity begins at home. You start using finer speech in your own internal dialogue. That was really a necessary thing. And it took me a while. I was having arguments with myself on a regular basis. Like I would start with my, oh, you fool. Because I dropped my purse and, the contents would be on the floors. And then I'd be, no, it's an accident. Like now I'm talking to myself like I'm two, like you would talk to your baby, But I was working on making an internal adjustment. I was making a commitment to Krishna that I wanted him to have a better experience inside of me, and in so doing, I was having a better relationship with myself.
Sure. That's quite incredible. And just as you were speaking, like you made this point that like when you express yourself, your motivation becomes very clear in your words. And so as Vidya Prabhu was saying, like you need to really tune in to your sadhana, listen, read, make a point of connecting with Krishna, because in turn you actually do become more refined just through the process of bhakti. And then when you're actually able to articulate yourself better, you have a better relationship with yourself, with people around you, and with Krishna, because you're that quality of prayer becomes a lot deeper and a lot sweeter actually. But it all comes from being very conscious of what you're putting in, like in terms of reading, hearing, and that sort of comes out
There was a period
in
when I was
terms of
having
how we
trouble.
speak.
I was having trouble reading a
So
lot.
I was like,
You were having trouble reading?
And so
I think
started.
a lot of people struggle with the. Sorry, I
So
missed that. You were having trouble reading, so you?
And so I started reading out loud, and I pictured that Prabhupada was sitting with me, so I was like reading to him, and I felt like he was feeding me with this extra understanding of what the words meant, and it was quite beneficial. I think I'm going to start doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things, because we, this is a process of self-realization, and part of it is learning, like when you get a new car, you got to learn how to drive that thing. You get a new phone, you got to learn how to drive that thing. You get a new body, you got to learn how to drive that thing. And you get your mind, you got to learn how to
Yeah.
drive that mind. And I tell you, this mind of mine, I wish I knew what I know now when I was going to school, because that's why if you saw what was going on over here, there's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books, all in, and I'm reading all of them at the same time because my brain is random, restless, and I'm going through all of them and finding the parts of the same time frame. They're all talking about initiation, going through all 7 of them. So one of the things I learned about my brain is I'll fall asleep after 15 minutes. If I'm reading one book for more than 15 minutes, I'm snoozing. So, but if I grab another book and start reading that, a different one, I'm right on it. So if I give myself variety, my brain doesn't conk out. And so I never knew that. I would just like, I could never I couldn't force myself because I just go to sleep. And I now know how to get around that. And so it's like learning the tricks of how to deal with your own mind.
Yeah.
And how it works. Is it a random mind? Is it linear? Like there's so many ways that a mind can work, and how you can work with the one you got. It's and the other thing
I
is
love
both Vidya and I are
that. We are.
geneticians. We're both astrologers, the two of us, and we talk astrology, and it's fun. But this Krishna conscious process is the remedial measure for birth, death, old age, and disease, and any planetary problems. So, oftentimes, like I remember going to the South Indian, famous on the TV, he was a devotee astrologer, and he just taught people to chant a couple rounds and follow codices. The life that Prabhupada has given us is the remedial measure for everything. So fine speech, of course, that's all factored in if we just do our sadhana.
Sadhana. I think that's definitely something. I think it's sort of overlooked because we kind of take it for granted. Oh, sadhana. Oh, 16 rounds. Oh, But
Well,
if we
do
do
we take eating for granted?
yeah.
Do easy. Sleeping? Yeah.
Yeah. I think
I think
that's
there's all these things that that we worry about, and when we think that when things get hard, when there's obstacles, difficulties, and challenges, that I'm being punished, and a devotee's never being punished. If you read the fine prints and so many of Prabhupada's purports, he's always saying that that everything that comes to us is for our ultimate benefit and our upliftment, but we're basically Krishna's trying to change the way that we see things. It's more subtle. It's all the subtle things that we've had the wrong mindset for so many lifetimes. I mean, here we still are. How are we still here? After how long we've been in the material samsara. So in order to kind of get free from that, if we can see that the obstacles, difficulties, and challenges is where we almost learn the most, rather than going, oh, this is so horrible, this is so difficult. If we can see, oh no, this is teaching us more than the happy times that are fun. I mean, here I am now at 80, and I look back and I go, oh, that was when I was learning something. That's when I made some movement in my life, and how much I wasted my life those years when I was trying to be happy. The whole time trying to be happy. So I think it's important that that we check our mindsets, and we understand that things aren't right and wrong, good and evil, reward and punishment, friend and enemy. That it's it's a chincha beta beta tattva. It's simultaneously one and different. It's all the same, and it's all all being given to us by Krishna for our ultimate purification.
Well, we're physically being refined. It's not just refined speech, it's refined everything. Be refined to go back to Krishna, it's stripping away all of the unwanted. So, yeah. Thank you so very
Thank you.
much to both of you.
Thanks a lot. Hare Krishna.
It was wonderful. Take care. Hare Krishna.
Hari Hari Bo. Jai Jai.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,